We are back in the Torch Center, and it is a special time for a few reasons. Number one, we are now, as we speak, running our annual fundraiser right now at givetorch.org. Every tax-deductible donation is doubled. It's our only annual fundraiser, and I thought we would do something really special in honor of the fundraiser. So I invited the legendary genius himself, Rabbi Shmuly Botnick, to come and to share with us the secrets and the mysteries of Parshas Shekalim in honor of the fundraiser. Now, the fundraiser is found at the website givetorch.org. Every donation is doubled. Did you hear that clearly? Did I make it myself clear, Rabbi Botnick? What's the website for the fundraiser?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one to answer. I was completely absorbed in my share. You want to repeat that?
givetorch.org.
Givetorch.org.
And how would I spell that if I wanted to spell that? Givetorch.org? How do you think you would spell that?
You're putting me on the spot here, but I'm going to take a stab at it. givetorch.org.
Now, to make it easier, when people listen to this podcast, I'm going to have links in the description. So they're going to open up the podcast and they're going to read the description, and it's going to have all sorts of links, and any one of those links will work. Just click it, and every donation is what? What happens to every donation, Rabbi Botnick?
So I heard you mention it gets doubled. I didn't hear you say anything about my commission. You want to maybe just articulate that?
Oh, Rabbi Botnick. Shmulik. Yes, yeah, your commission will be sizable. Okay? Now, okay, so in honor of this, we're doing something special. As you know, we're doing a new podcast every month to talk about the secrets of the month. And now we're in middle of the month of Shvat. We haven't quite gotten up to the month of Adar. But the truth is, there are other stuff that are happening in the calendar, and included in that is the 4 special weeks that are around this time, the month of Adar and the month of Nisan. So a little background. This week is going to be Parshas Mishpatim. But in the shul, they're going to take out not one Torah scroll, but 2 Torah scrolls from the Ark. And one of them is going to be the regular weekly Torah section, Parshas Mishpatim. And the other Torah scroll is going to be for Parshas Shekalim. And when we read the Torah, we finish it, we're going to open up the second Torah and read from Parshas Shekalim. And the origin of this goes back many, many millennia, many centuries ago. There are 4 weeks in the calendar that, in addition to the regular weekly Parsha reading, we have an extra reading from an extra part in the Torah. And the first of those 4 weeks is this week, and it's Parshas Shekalim. And then we're going to read about Parshas Zachar, and then we'll have Parshas Para, and finally Parshas HaChodesh. And then once we've done those 4 special weeks, we go back to the normal programming. Now, this is not like a whole Parsha. You know, the average Parsha is 108 verses. This Parshas Shekalim, which is the second Parsha again that we read this upcoming week, it's only 6 verses, and it's from Exodus chapter 30. And it's talking about the tabernacle and the building of the tabernacle. And it talks about the fundraising effort, which, how amazing is that? The week that we're doing fundraising, it just happens to be that the Torah reading also relates to fundraising. Unbelievable. But it's talking about the fundraising effort that was done every year. Just like amazing. We do a yearly fundraiser. There was a yearly fundraiser done in temple times when the temple and when the tabernacle were extant. And they would collect a half a shekel. That's what it's called, shekalim, shekel, half a shekel coin. And that was used for the temple coffers to buy communal sacrifices. And everyone gave a uniform amount. And this provides atonement. And I could not think of a better, more apt metaphor for the fundraiser. You have a tabernacle. It's like a portable Sinai. And that's really what we're doing here at Torch with the amazing podcast that we have. It's kind of like a portable Sinai. We're building an edifice of Torah, and we need your support. GiveTorch.org. Every donation is doubled. Please welcome Rabbi Shmuly Botnick to tell us about the secrets and the mysteries of Parshas Shekalim.
Okay, will do. I just want to mention one thing before that. You were saying how this week is Parshas Mishpatim, in addition to it being the Shekalim. I think that's pretty much every year, unless it's a leap year. And I always marvel at the fact and I haven't seen this anywhere, that Mishpatim is actually the same gematria as Shekalim.
Wow.
It's off by one. So it's going to be, Mishpatim is 479 and Shekalim is 480. And just how uncanny is that?
Well, aren't we allowed an allowance for the gematria system? We're allowed an allowance of one. We could be off by one and it still counts. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm saying that it's considered to be the same gematria. A conversation for a different time, why we're allowed to be one off. We're not usually that liberal. But,
yeah, because if you went to, let's say, div torch, but you spelled the torch instead of torch, you spelled torque or something like that, .org, it probably won't arrive at the website. I don't know. It has to be divtorch.org. Is that right?
That's right.
So you're wondering, Rabbi Botnick is wondering, well, how come with gematria, allowed to be off a little bit somehow when it comes to givetorch.org, it's got to be precise. Yeah. I'm gonna try to find every excuse to say givetorch.org in this podcast. You forgive me.
I also like the idea that every donation is doubled, because that's also very much parallel to the idea of the Shekalim, right? Because you give half and half. It's like every donation is really half a donation, right?
Fantastic.
Right, but let's jump into it. So there's a lot here. Parshas Shekalim ostensibly isn't all that significant, like you mentioned. It's just 6 verses which get lumped onto the end of Kriyas Torah.
The reading of the Torah.
So it doesn't really take up all that much real estate in terms of the calendar or in terms of the prayer. But there's one medrash that I'm aware of that gives insight into just how fascinatingly deep it actually is. This medrash I've seen quoted many times, and often there's like different versions, like slightly different variations, but it's the general theme. So the way it works is as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu is having a conversation with Hashem. And he says to Hashem as follows. He says, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the world, Shema misha ani meis ein ani nizkar. Perhaps, when I die, I will no longer be remembered. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem responds to this, Chayecha, kishem she'ata omed achshav v'nosin lahem Parshas Shekalim v'ata zokef es roshan kach b'chol shana b'shana kashi Yisrael kohen b'Parshas Shekalim kilo ata omed v'zokef es roshan. Okay. The translation of that is as follows. Hashem says, just as like now, you are telling them, you are teaching them about this Parsha of Shekalim, these 6 verses that discuss the contribution of the Shekalim, and you are lifting their heads, okay, very peculiar, very cryptic wording there. So to every single year, when they read Parsha Shekalim, so this coming Shabbos, Ki'ilu ata omed, it says, if you are standing there, v'zokef es roshan, and lifting their heads. It is as if you are lifting their heads every single year. And then it says that this is actually alluded to in the verse because it says kisisa, as you lift. It doesn't say, as you will lift. It doesn't say sa, as you lift. It says kisisa, as you will lift. It's not past tense. It's not even present tense. It is future tense, which has the implication that this is going to be an ongoing procedure. So do you understand?
This is just an incredible midrash that Moshe has this existential dread that he's going to be forgotten and no one's going to invoke him, which is something I think that a lot of us can relate to, this idea of wanting some sort of eternality. And Moshe, this incredible midrash, which I never saw it till today, till you shared your notes with me like 5 minutes before we recorded. I've never seen this midrash before. Moshe's worried about what's going to be, who will remember him? What's going to be his eternal contribution to this world? And God says, don't worry about it. We have Parshas Shekalim, and just like you're lifting their heads now, you'll do that again each year when we get to Parshas Shekalim. Very mysterious and cryptic.
That's right. Now, I think just to add to that, there's also an element of irony here, because on the one hand, it sounds as if like Parshas Shekalim is Moshe Rabbeinu's, that's like his territory. That's his thing. Like every single year, Parshas Shekalim, Moshe Rabbeinu is there. But we know that at least in the genesis of the evolvement of Parshas Shekalim, Moshe Rabbeinu was very confused, whatever that means, because we're told that the verse says, Zeh Yitnu. This is what you shall give. And the term Zeh is a little bit, it seems to be extraneous. And Rashi tells us, and this is also a medrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu could not understand Parshas Shekalim. There was something about it that was baffling him. And Hashem had to take a shekel, or a half a shekel, from beneath the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, and it was made of fire, okay? It was a half a shekel made out of fire, which he produced from beneath the throne of glory, and he said, Zeh Yitnu. Alright, so just to explain, every time you see the word Zeh in the Torah, it always means like there's a direct indication. It's like they're pointing. They're literally pointing at something and saying Zeh, this. So Moshe Rabbeinu was like confused. This machzah, this half a shekel, what are you talking about? And Hashem's like, oh, okay, I'll show you. And he pulls out from beneath the throne of glory a fiery half a shekel, which that's also baffling in and of itself. What is it that Moshe Rabbeinu, who is presumably a very wise person, who knew all of the Torah, who delivered all of the Torah to the Jews, taught all the Torah to the Jewish people, what is it about this half a shekel that he found so confounding? And what does it mean that God produced it from beneath the throne of glory? So these are all
and
questions.
like you said, there's a certain irony that this is the mitzvah that embodies Moshe. He's going to be uplifting their head with the half shekel, and thus you would think that this mitzvah is really Moshe's hallmark. This is what he personifies. Yet when it came to the initial instruction of the half shekel, he was mystified about it. He had to be shown this fiery half shekel coin. What do we make of that contrast? That on one hand, Moshe is befuddled by this. On the other hand, this is like what he does. This is what he stands for. And this is his ticket, so to speak, to eternity.
That's right. Okay, so to understand, or at least to try to unravel some of the mystery here, we have to get a clear picture on what the function of these half shekels are. So I think Rabbi Wolbe gave a very apt description of just the technicalities of it, right? So it was a fundraiser. Wait, speaking of fundraiser, Rabbi Wolbe, is there anything?
Oh, you make me so happy. Yes, there is a fundraiser at givetorch.org. Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Proceed.
Is that givetorch.com or is that .org?
You know what? Givetorch.com also goes to the main page. But if you want to support my team, it's givetorch.org. But givetorch.com goes to the main page as well, and that's okay. If someone wants to give to the main page, or every one of the different podcasts has their own page, and even my two older boys, Akiva and Yoshua, they both have their pages. So there's a lot of different options. But givetorch.org is the preferred one, but whatever page someone wants to give to, we appreciate it.
All right. Okay, but I digress. In middle of the verses discussing, just the technical procedure of how this giving a half shekel works, it mentions in there that it has a very specific purpose, which is lechaper al nafsho seichem, to atone for your souls. Okay, so this giving of the half a shekel isn't merely for financial purposes. It has a very specific spiritual implication, which is that it atones for our souls. Okay, now, obviously, when you hear that it atones for something, you have to know what that thing is. And we find in different sources within the various works of our sages, we're going to find two different explanations. So the Yerushalmi, the Talmud Yerushalmi tells us that the atonement that is happening, the sin that that is being atoned for, is one of the greatest sins of all time, the sin of the golden calf. Okay, which we're all familiar with. Following the giving of the Torah, 40 days in, Moshe Rabbeinu is still at the top of Mount Sinai. The Jewish people are getting anxious. Where is he? And however it evolved, they just decided that the right thing to do was to create a golden calf and to worship it. Obviously, a big mistake on their part. And for the rest of history, we have to atone for it. Somehow the giving of this half a shekel does that. It somehow has some sort of positive effect in moving us further away from that sin and cleansing us from it. So again, this is not something I understand, or at least not yet, but that is what we are taught. All right, Rabbi Wolbe?
Yeah, so the first source that we have is that the half shekel is going to atone for the sin, for the blemish brought about by the sin of the golden calf. That's one of, you said there's two explanations. That's the first one. Right,
so that's number one. Number two is, this is found in the Yalkut, so that's a medrash. And it is in Parshas Kisiso, where the Parsha of Shekalim is found. And it says no, it does not mention anything about the golden calf. It says it is for the sin of the selling of Yosef. So 10 or 9 of the other tribes sold Yosef down to Egypt, and that was also a very serious sin. And what the Medrash tells us is that this giving of the half a shekel is to atone for that sin. All right, so we
have these two national crimes of the Jewish people, either the sale of Joseph as a slave, this horrific betrayal of brotherhood that happened, of course, in the book of Genesis, and that blemish is somehow rectified. There's atonement, there's expiation that's conferred by the half shekel. That's one opinion. Second opinion is that it's the sin of the golden calf, and that is what is atoned for by the half shekel coin.
Right. So presumably, it would seem that these are two completely different and disparate explanations. One has nothing to do with the other. But as we will quickly see, that is not the case, because we find striking overlap between these two sins, between the selling of Yosef and the golden calf. I'm going to point out two sources where you see this. One is in the Torah's Kohanim. All right, so that's another medrash. This is at the beginning of Parshas Shmini. So that's talking about the inauguration of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And there were various karbanos that the Jewish people had to bring and that the Kohanim had to bring. All kinds of different sacrifices going on there. So the Jewish people were told that they had to bring two specific karbanos. One was a seir izim, a goat, and the other was an egel. I can read to you the verse. Vel b'nei Yisrael tadaber lemor, tell the Jewish people, kechu seir izim lechatos, bring a goat as a chatos, v'egel v'cheves, an egel is a calf, v'cheves also a sheep, as an ola, as another sacrifice. Okay, so right there you have a seir izim, a goat, and a calf. They're being brought together as sacrifices at the inauguration of the tabernacle. Now we know that the goat is very much connected with the sale of Yosef. Rabbi Wolbe, do you want to explain how and why that is?
I think what you're referring to, if I'm not mistaken, is that after they sold Joseph, they had to come up with some sort of plan of how they're going to break the news to Jacob. And they take a goat and they slaughter it and they dip his tunic in that goat and they present it to Jacob and say, this is what we found. Do you recognize it? Is it the tunic of your son Joseph? And Jacob recognizes the tunic and he bewails and he mourns and he's inconsolable for decades. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. So the goat is analogous or representative of the sin of the sale of Yosef. And then the other animal to bring is an egel, is a calf, and that's obviously going to correlate with the sin of the golden calf.
So at the initiation of the tabernacle, we have two sacrifices that both seem to relate to these two sins, which again, at first glance, appear to be totally unrelated. Now we're seeing maybe the contours of the similarities or of the overlap between these two. Okay. Now
the other one is, I'm sorry, but I know this to be true. I just didn't get the exact source for it. Rabbi Wolbe, maybe you'll know offhand. But we are taught that, I think maybe it's a Gemara in Sota, that when they left Egypt, so Moshe Rabbeinu was very busy with something, and that was locating and exhuming the coffin of Yosef. And he did this in a very mystical way. He knew that the coffin of Yosef had been not buried, but sunk into the bottom of the Nile River. Okay, now how are you going to get it out? So what he did was he took a little golden, like a golden plaque, and he wrote on it the words Ale Shor, lift up the ox, lift up the ox. Now Yosef HaTzadik, for one reason or another, is likened to an ox, and by throwing this little plaque into the Nile River, that somehow effectuated the rising of the coffin. You're familiar with this, correct?
Yes. And not only that, we've spoken about this in a recent podcast about, during the Exodus, everyone's trying to figure out how to stockpile more gold and silver. And Moshe is concerned with the bones of Joseph. And in one version of the Midrash, he spends 3 days and 3 nights looking for it. But yes, we are told that the means by which he got it up was some sort of plate, some metal plate with the words, "Arise, O ox." He drops it into the Nile at the spot where he believes that the bones of Joseph are interred, and the bones in their coffin float to the surface. Moshe grabs it and takes it with him for the Exodus.
Right. Okay, but there's a morbid epilogue to that story, and that is when it came time for the Jewish people. I shouldn't say it came time. When the Jewish people, for one reason or another, decided that they wanted to formulate a golden calf, they took this very plaque, the same plaque which resulted in the retrieval of Yosef HaTzadik's bones. They took that, tossed it into the fire, and out came a golden calf, which is just so fascinating. And we're not going to get into exactly what that means, but what we can tell just from the general sketch of occurrences is that Yosef and the golden calf appear to be interrelated with each other, right? The very same piece of metal, this mystical piece of metal, which managed to bring Yosef's coffin upward from the Nile, also managed to produce the golden calf. So really cool stuff.
By the way, while you were talking about that, I looked it up and I found the source. It is featured in the Midrash, and it's featured in Rashi to Exodus chapter 32, verse 4, how Moshe wrote on this plate of metal the words Alei Shor, arise, O ox. And that was used for the formation of the golden calf some months later.
Okay, so, just circling back now to the Shekalim. So I told you earlier that there were two sources. What is this atonement going on? And we saw that one was for the golden calf, one was for the selling of Yosef. It seemed to us that was two completely different explanations. We are now seeing that there's a direct line connecting Yosef and the golden calf, and therefore it would appear to be that these two sources are really hinting at one and the same thing, and we're going to try to identify what that is.
Let's go.
Okay. Now, the Yerushalmi tells us, and this is halachic, they make a halachic point, which is that at the giving of the machzis shekel, when all of the Jewish people had to give their half a shekel, says the Yerushalmi, Kohanim are included in that commandment. I'm not sure why we might think that they're not, but for some reason Yerushalmi says, finds it important to emphasize that they are. And it's not obvious that they are. They have to learn this from an extra word in the verse. And that word is zeh. Remember we discussed this earlier. It says the word zeh, this is what shall be given. We quoted from the Rashi and others who tell us that God was pointing to this half a shekel because for some reason Moshe Rabbeinu found it to be incomprehensible. And he says, Zeh, this is what you should give. Okay, Yerushalmi says something else. Yerushalmi says that the word Zeh has the numerical value of 12, right? The word Zeh is easy, it's 2 letters. So Zeh, Zayin, is 7, Hey is 5. 7 plus 5 is 12. Zeh, 12 shall give, says the Yerushalmi. What that means is all 12 tribes must contribute. You might have thought that the Kohanim, or, their entire tribe, Levi, is exempt. Says the Torah, no, they are not exempt. Zeh, all 12 have to contribute together. So we see two things are really going on with this word Zeh. A, it's teaching us that God pointed to it. B, it is teaching us that all 12 have to give. Okay. Now what I find to be striking about that is the word zeh is very common in the Torah. It just means this. So anytime the Torah wants to say the word this, it says zeh. Now, I only know of one time, and I don't know all of the Torah, so I might be mistaken, but I only know of one other time where the rabbis tell us that the word zeh is alluding to all 12 tribes. When Yosef he's traveling from his father's house all the way down to where his brothers are hanging out, and this is in Parshas Vayeshev. This is a very ominous moment. He's about to get sold. right? I don't think he knows that he's about to get sold, but the brothers are planning this, that they're actually planning to kill him, right? They later change courses and they sell him. But as he's traveling down towards the place where his brothers are waiting for him, he meets a man. And he says, Es achai anochi mevakesh hagida nali eifo heim roim. I am looking for my brothers. Do you know where they are? And this man, who Rashi tells us is actually an angel, says, Nas'u mizeh. They traveled from here. All right? Now, Rashi tells us that when he says Nas'u mizeh, he says, Hesiu atzman min ha'achva. They have abandoned the brotherhood because the word zeh is gematria 12, as the numerical value of 12. And what this man, this angel, was telling Yosef was they no longer want to be your brother. They want to disband this unit of 12. So as far as I know, the only other time where we find that the word zeh is meant to be understood as a reference to the 12 tribes is specifically by Mechiras Yosef, specifically by the selling of Yosef. So this is just really, really fascinating. On the one hand, we're being told by the Medrash that the machzis shekel, this half a shekel, is meant to atone for the selling of Yosef. It says the word zeh referring to all 12 tribes. The only other time where you find that the word zeh refers to all 12 tribes is by the selling of Yosef. Rabbi Wilby, what is on your mind?
Unbelievable. So the word zeh appears by the half shekel. The word zeh appears by the sale of Joseph. In both those instances, we're told that the word zeh, the gematria, is 7 plus 5, which is 12, and refers to all 12. All 12 were part of this family, but this family kind of came apart. Nasumi zeh, they have departed from zeh, they have departed from this brotherhood, from this kinship of zeh of 12. And when it comes to the rectification of that, the fixing of that sin, it says zeh yitnu, they will give. This is what they should give, which is zeh, which is 12. All 12 must give, including the Kohanim that you perhaps would have thought would be exempt. But that zeh and that zeh, which refer to these 12 tribes, are connected according to our sages.
Excellent. Now I want to tell you just one more tidbit about the word zeh. In Parshas Vayetze, we find when Yaakov Avinu, he arrives at a mountaintop, not really knowing what its significance is. He falls asleep. Okay, well, first like this. He lies down. He surrounds himself with 12 stones. Then he falls asleep. As he's sleeping, the 12 stones become one. And he has this amazing dream, this amazing epiphany of a ladder. We're not getting into this. I'm sure Rabbi will spoke about it extensively in various Parshas Vayetze podcasts. But he wakes up and he says like this: Ma nora hamakom hazeh, ein zeh kiem beis Elokim v'zeh sha'ar hashamayim. Okay, ma nora hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place, right? You find the word zeh. Ein zeh kiem beis Elokim. This is nothing but the house of God. V'zeh sha'ar hashamayim, and this is the gate of heaven. Lots of zehs, right? 3 zehs. Rabbeinu Bachaye, one of the Rishonim, says that each one is referring to one of the 3 Beis HaMikdashes, but one of 3 Batei Mikdash, I should say.
Temples.
One of the 3 temples. So you have Manor HaMakom Hazeh. How awesome is this place? That's temple number 1. Ein Zeh Kim Beis Elokim. That's temple number 2. The reason why is that Ein Zeh is negative, right? It's lacking. Ein Zeh, this is nothing but the house of God, and that is because the second Beis HaMikdash was severely lacking many of the features that the first Beis HaMikdash had. And then V'zeh Sha'ar HaShamayim, that this is the gate of heaven, is referring to the third and final Beis HaMikdash. Now, where is he getting this from, that the word Zeh is an allusion to the Beis HaMikdash? Well, he actually is getting it from 2 weeks ago's Parsha. Right? 2 weeks ago was Parshas Bishalach, right? We're recording this. It's in Parshas Mishpatim, Sunday Parshas Mishpatim. So we just finished Parshas Yisro, and Parshas Bishalach should be somewhere, not too far back in our memory. During the splitting of the sea, right? So they all sing this timeless Shira, Oz Yashem Moshe, and in middle they say, Zeh keli vanvehu. This is my God, and I will, how would you translate vanvehu? I'll beautify him, or?
Yeah, or I will build him a sanctuary.
Exactly. I will build him a sanctuary, right? So that's what the Targum Onkelos says. I mean, the word vanvehu is not literally I'll build him a sanctuary, but that's what the Targum Onkelos tells us. So you see from there that when you say the word zeh, you're pointing at something, say, I'll build him a Beis HaMikdash, right? The word zeh is very much related to Beis HaMikdash. It's based on that Rabbeinu Bachaye in Parshas Vayetze tells us that zeh, all three zehs are referring to the Beis HaMikdash. So, a lot going on. It's just two letters, but...
So we have the word zeh talking about the half shekel. We have the word zeh talking about the crumbling of the brotherhood. And we have a zeh appearing in many places, in many different contexts, to relate to the temple in Jerusalem, built on the same spot where Jacob has his nocturnal dream and prophecy, with the ladder suspended to heaven, with the angels of God going up and down.
That's right. Now, I want to focus on that last source first. So the word zeh refers to the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Okay, why? So here's what I want to suggest. I want to suggest that it's all very much coming from the same place as the previous sources we found about the word zeh, and that is, think back to those stones. How many stones were there, Rabbi Wolbe?
12 stones. Wow.
12 stones. Alluding to the 12 tribes that would ultimately come from Yaakov. So the 12 tribes are there, and not only are they there, but they become one. It's the ultimate unity of the 12. Okay, that's the ultimate, and where is it happening? On Har HaMoriah, where the Beis HaMikdash will be built. Exactly. So the ultimate unity of all 12 tribes is happening right there where the Beis HaMikdash will be built, but it's much more than that. Because we are taught, and the Orach Chaim says this explicitly, I've seen it since in Midrashim, that this stone was really the Even Shesia.
The foundation stone.
The foundation stone. The foundation of what? The foundation of the Beis HaMikdash, and really the foundation of the whole world. That's what the Midrashim tell us, that the world was like created, it was like the nucleus from which the world was created, which is this Even Shesia. Comes out something fascinating, which is the Beis HaMikdash, and really the whole world, evolve and are a product of the unity of all 12 tribes. Right? You take 12 stones, put them together, and you got something that has the power and the potency to evolve into a world.
So Jacob's stones, the 12 stones that he scatters around his head, they merge into one. That stone is the stone of the foundation stone. That's the bedrock, the foundation of the whole world. And what is the roots? What are the foundations of the entire world and the temple? This fusion and this merging and this melding of the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes, into one indivisible unit.
I just want to point out, when we say the temple and the whole world, it's really one of the same thing. Temple was like a microcosm of the whole world. So it's really, it's the foundation of the temple, and that obviously has these spiritual implications to be the foundation of the whole world. And also, when I say the word it evolves, obviously it's God overseeing that. We don't believe in evolution. You know, it's obviously a product of God's process of creation.
It emanates from that.
It emanates from that. That's right. That's the right word. Okay, so at least what we did here is we managed to connect two of the themes we just saw. Let's leave the half shekel thing aside for a moment. But we were introduced to the idea that the word zeh refers to the 12 tribes, right? That's what the Yerushalmi told us, that all 12 tribes have to give this half a shekel because it says the word zeh. And then we saw something that seemed completely separate, that the word zeh refers to the Beis HaMikdash. We managed to put those two together. Hopefully we're correct about this, that it's really one and the same, because the Beis HaMikdash is really built upon the Even Shesia, the cornerstone, which is an encapsulation of the 12 tribes. Okay, now let's move along. Well, let's back up for a second. So we have a deeper understanding into the severity. I think, based on this, we have a deeper understanding into the severity of the sin of selling Yosef. Because when you sell Yosef, right, as the verse said, nasu mizeh, right, they abandoned the brotherhood. What's really going on is the entire world is falling apart, right? Because the Even Shesia, the cornerstone from which emanates the entire world, is based on the premise that there's going to be unity between all 12 tribes, right? All 12 stones turned into one. From there emanated the Beis HaMikdash, from there emanated the entire world. If you dismantle that structure, you just destroyed everything. So the selling, that's why the selling of Yosef is just so eternally impactful. Because it wasn't just a one-time thing, brothers scuffling with each other. It was literally a destruction of the very premise of the entire creation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it means that it's so existentially catastrophic. If the whole world and the temple, which is a microcosm of the world, if all that, the basis of that, the foundation of that, the roots of that is this zeh, is this 12, is this unity of 12, is this merging and fusion of that stone into one. The severing, the splintering of this unity, it's not just one family's troubles, it's the foundation of the world and the temple being eroded or being destroyed. That is the consequences, essentially, of this family coming apart. And thus the sale of Joseph really is the equivalent of the destabilization of the world and the uprooting or the splintering. The schism is the splintering of the foundation of the temple and the world.
That's right. Now, one of the objectives of this shir, as we began, was how do we understand the connection between the sin of the golden calf and the selling of Yosef? We saw that there's definitely a connection, right? It was the very same tablet, right? Very same plaque that exhumed Yosef was what resulted in the golden calf. We found other sources as well. There's clearly a connection. What is that connection? I don't profess to fully understand it, but I want to throw out one idea. So we know that the selling of Yosef was really a division between the 12 tribes, ultimately eroding the foundation of the world. The sin of the golden calf, very, very difficult one to understand what was going on, but partially is that you find a disunity. There's a theme of disunity going on there. Because when they sinned, they pointed at the golden calf and they said the word Eila Elohecha Yisrael. This is your God. But the word Eila, Rabbi Wolbein, correct me if I'm wrong, I think grammatically is the exact same thing as the word Zeh. Right? You're pointing at something, you're identifying something specific. But what is the difference between Zeh and Eila? The word Zeh is you pointing at one thing. The word Eila is you're pointing at multiple things.
This versus these.
This versus these, exactly. I think, does it say anywhere that there were actually 12 different golden calves? I've heard that said. That each tribe had their own.
Wow, I never knew that.
I would have to look that up, but I've seen that, and that's why
it makes sense. You think we should do our research beforehand?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a mad dash, but there was just 12. They were all serving, even if there weren't 12 separate ones. They were all clearly on different pages, right? They're saying these. They're not saying that.
Isn't that the essence really of idolatry? Like we believe that all the powers coalesce into one, just into the Almighty. All the power is all found in one root and one source. And all the power that is dispensed to others, it's all relative power and it's all more finite power. The Almighty allows us to have power. The Almighty allows the sun to shine and the moon to shine at night and the water and all the things that were worshipped as individual discrete powers. That's the idolatry. It's kind of it's the fracturing of the oneness of the unitary oneness of the singularity of God.
That's right. And okay, another thing we find is that when Moshe descends from the mountain, it says, right, it's very interesting. It doesn't say he saw the golden calf and he threw down the luchos, the tablets. That's not what it says. It says that he saw the mecholos, he saw the dancings, right? The various circles, right? The word mecholos means circles. And I don't know if I've heard this or thought of this myself, but we find that the Gemara tells us that in the time of Mashiach, Hashem will make a machol la tzadikim. He'll make one circle for all the tzadikim, and he's going to sit within them. Right? This was the exact opposite of that, right? So the egel is not Hashem, obviously. Egel is the exact opposite of what God represents. It's idolatry. And what's surrounding it? Not a circle, but circles, right? Disunity. That's what's going on here. There's just a division. And it seems almost as if that's what ticked Moshe off. It wasn't like the sin of the egel. It was like, oh my gosh, there's circles. I got to get rid of the luchos, right? And I think that's the explanation, is because what was really going on at the root of the sin of the golden calf was the discord that resulted from the golden calf.
Very interesting. Very interesting. There's the realm of Zeh and the realm of Elah. And there's the single loop, so to speak. That's the fate of the righteous in Olam Haba, in the world to come, in the future. And then there's the multiple kind of independent circles that were present at the sin of the golden calf. And that symbolizes the disunity, discord, and fracturing and splintering of the nation, kind of a reenactment of the sale of Joseph.
Exactly. Now, I didn't research this enough, this theory about the golden calf being the catalyst for this kind of fracturing, but I do have circumstantial evidence to its truth, and that is that the primary atonement that was issued for the sin of the golden calf was the building of the tabernacle, the building of the Mishkan. Now, the Mishkan is really a forebearer of the Beis HaMikdash. It's really one and the same idea. The verse is very explicit. When they finalized the inauguration, or really the construction of the Mishkan, the verse says, V'haya ha-Mishkan echad. And the Mishkan was one. I never really understood what that verse means. Of course it was one. There weren't multiple tabernacles. But I think the idea is the Mishkan unified the Jewish people. And this we know was meant to be an atonement for the sin of the golden calf. So it would almost seem like exactly what we're saying, right? The bulk, the brunt of the calamity of the golden calf was the disunity, and therefore the rectification was the construction of a Mishkan, which will result in unity. V'haya ha-Mishkan echad.
Beautiful. Regarding
the Beis HaMikdash, I just want to quote to a Maharal. I think we actually quoted this in our Teves shir, which says, Yisrael misachtem al yedei Beis HaMikdash. The Jewish people become unified through the Beis HaMikdash. And then he says that was the reason why sinas chinam, baseless hatred, resulted in the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, because the Beis HaMikdash and unity work in tandem. Like, for the Beis HaMikdash to work, there has to be unity. And when the Beis HaMikdash actually results in unity, when we deflect that unity, the Beis HaMikdash gets destroyed. So again, like you said, we're starting to see how the sale of Yosef and the sin of the Egel are really one and the same. It's almost as if one is like a manifestation of the other. They sold Yosef, they created this discord, they created room for discord amongst the 12 tribes, and that came to a head by the sin of the Egel. Okay, so far, let's back up. What do we have with the word Zeh? So the word Zeh means all 12 tribes. The word Zeh means the Beis HaMikdash. But the word Zeh also somehow alludes to this half a shekel, right? Hashem extracted this half a shekel from beneath the throne of glory, points to it and says, this is the half a shekel. So the missing piece here is, how are we going to connect the idea of the 12 tribes, the Beis HaMikdash, to this half a shekel, right? That's where we got to go, and Rabbi Wolbe, you're going to help me. You're going to help me get there. So let's focus on this idea that the shekel comes from beneath the throne of glory. The Medrash tells us, and this I didn't see it in the Medrash itself. I saw it in the Sefer Tzlach on Chagiga, that at the moment of the world's creation, God took sheleg, he took snow from beneath the throne of glory, and he threw it to the ground. Okay? He threw it to the ground. And from there, it created this Even Shesia, this cornerstone of the world. So let me just read to you the exact words. Not to HaKadosh Baruch Hu afar. Okay, so here he says that God took earth. I've seen elsewhere that it says snow. Mitachas kisei hakavod, from beneath the throne of glory, v'zarak al pnei hamayim, and he threw it down onto the water. And then he says, Even shesia shemenu shas ha'olam ha'makom zeh yisoda mi'afar shetachas kisei kavoda. So he says that earth is that clump of earth that he extracted from beneath the throne of glory was the Even Shesiyah, was the cornerstone of the world. Okay, so this is just another link. We know that this machzis shekel, the half shekel, was extracted from beneath the kisei kavod. Okay, we know that the Even Shesiyah, which is this 12 theme, right? Because the 12 tribes are what formulated the Even Shesiyah, is very much related to this Even Shesiyah, right? The cornerstone. And now we know that it comes from beneath the throne of glory. And
so
we also know that
two things come from beneath the throne of glory. A, the fiery coin that God showed Moshe, Zeyitnu, give this coin. Moshe had a hard time knowing exactly what coin to give. And the origin stone, the foundation stone, the Even Shesiyah stone, the Zeh stone, the 12 stones that merged into one stone, that also came, or it originated from underneath the throne of glory. Again, what that means, I don't know exactly what it means. It's obviously a Kabbalistic concept, but they both come from the same source, which means that they're intimately connected.
Okay, so here's all I have to say, and I don't know all of the Kabbalistic underpinnings to this, but I know two things. First of all, it says that God extracted a half shekel of fire. Okay, very specific. It's made of fire. Now we know that there's something else that's made of fire, which is the Beis HaMikdash, right? Ki ba'esh hitzata u'be'esh ata asid levnosa. The final Beis HaMikdash will be made of fire. It will descend in fire. Okay, now this machzis shekel is fire. Okay, and we know that it's somehow related to this cornerstone from which emanated the whole Beis HaMikdash. We know also that unity is crucial for the creation and for the existence of the Beis HaMikdash. The idea of this machzis shekel is the different parts of Jewish people coming together, right? And this is very often spoken about, how the reason why everyone doesn't give 1 shekel, they give half a shekel, is because we're trying to create unity. Exactly this. I'll give half, you'll give half, together we create a whole. That is the lesson that's supposed to be taken. That is the positive spiritual effect that the giving of the machzis shekel is supposed to promulgate. That is the entire theme of machzis shekel, is to create unity. Okay, so lumping all of this together is you got this thing, it's this half a shekel made of fire coming from the same place as the cornerstone of the Beis HaMikdash. Both of them are all about unity. The cornerstone is all about the unity of Jewish people. This half shekel is all about the unity of Jewish people. They're both coming from beneath the throne of glory. You see where we're going here?
I think so. I will note that the throne of glory, aren't we told in the sources that on one side of it had an image of Jacob? Is that right? And Jacob, of course, is the father of these 12 tribes, and he's the one that has this. 12 tribes come from him, and that's he's the embodiment of this completion of these 12 tribes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, here's where I'm going with all this. What I want to suggest is, all right, now this is a big move, and I'm making this up. I've got a lot on the line here. I want to suggest that this idea of the half shekel being made out of fire, coming from beneath the throne of glory, is that when you put these halves together, we're building the Beis HaMikdash. The conceptual, spiritual Beis HaMikdash. But not just any Beis HaMikdash. Specifically the Beis HaMikdash of fire, which is the third Beis HaMikdash. That's what we're taught. The first Beis HaMikdash, Shlomo HaMelech built it, ground up. Second one was also built. The third is going to come down in fire. This half shekel is made of fire because this half shekel is the one that will ultimately build the Beis HaMikdash.
Interesting. Isn't that based upon the idea that the way we build the third temple, the third Beis HaMikdash, is via unity, right? Via removal of the disunity. Now, if this half shekel theme that no one's complete on their own and we're all dependent on each other and on your own you're just a half and we all need to come together to be able to create this wonderful enterprise together. If that's the theme of this half shekel coin, it makes sense that it should be the building or the steps, the process through which we build the third temple.
That's right. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu looked at this half shekel, of which God said Zeh, right? Right? God said Zeh, pointing to the half shekel, right? Why is he saying Zeh? Zeh is the term we use for the Beis HaMikdash. Yet he's pointing at this half shekel and he's saying the exact same term we use in reference to the Beis HaMikdash is the word Zeh. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu looks at it and he doesn't understand it. Why does he not understand it? I think the answer is because Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to build that third Beis HaMikdash, right? We know that Moshe Rabbeinu ultimately, what was supposed to happen was, he was supposed to enter Eretz Yisrael and build the third Beis HaMikdash. Okay? And he was punished, and he wasn't allowed to do that. Okay, so there's this divide, there's this blockage between Moshe Rabbeinu and the third Beis HaMikdash. That's why I think Moshe Rabbeinu could not understand it. I would add, perhaps, that remember we said that the Beis HaMikdash emanated from the Even Shesiyah. Now, this is a little wild, and I don't want to get into it, but it's possible that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash was because, why? What was the sin? Rabbi Wolbe, what was the sin for which Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for?
Well, he struck the rock as opposed to speaking to it.
Exactly. He struck the rock. Now, I did see, and I don't know if this has credible sources, that this rock, this rock of Miriam was actually the Even Shesiyah. This rock
that
that
same
he struck.
foundation stone, the one that melded into from 12 individual stones to one, that stone was the stone from which the water was emitted. And Moshe struck that same stone. Okay, and that's why he was barred. That's why he was disallowed from entering the land. And that stone, well, that's the same stone. The foundation stone is the same stone as the stone that was giving the Jewish people water in the wilderness. Wow.
Right. Okay. I mean, I don't want to get too into that because I did this that was very briefly. I thought of it actually like as I was running to give this here. So I don't really know. But that's beside the point. The point is what I'm trying to submit here is that Moshe Rabbeinu, there was some lack of comprehension of this shekel because it relates to the third temple, which Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to build and ultimately didn't build. Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu is afraid that when he dies, he will not be remembered, right? That's how he started all this off. We quoted a medrash, which is completely confounding, which says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, God, I'm afraid when I die, I will not be remembered. God says, okay, don't worry. Every single year when they read the Parsha of Shekalim, you'll be there and you'll lift their heads and you'll be remembered through that. What in the world? So here's what I want to suggest. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu feel like when he dies, he'll be forgotten? I think the answer is specifically because of this, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu ultimately was supposed to enter Israel, build the Beis HaMikdash. That Beis HaMikdash was supposed to last for eternity, we're taught. The Beis HaMikdash that Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to build would have lasted forever. When Moshe Rabbeinu was told that he will not enter Israel, will not build the Beis HaMikdash, he said, okay, that means my legacy will ultimately fade away. Right? Just like any other human being. The only people we remember are the ones who have some sort of legacy that endures. And Moshe Rabbeinu felt like his legacy was meant to be the Beis HaMikdash, and that failed. So God says, don't worry, there's the Parsha Shekalim. And when they read it, every year when they read Parsha Shekalim, you'll be there. Why will you be there? Because this is your territory. This is alluding to the third Beis HaMikdash, which ultimately you will build. I didn't get into this so much, but ultimately Mashiach is going to be the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And so Moshe Rabbeinu will ultimately build that third Beis HaMikdash. And because this half a shekel relates to that third Beis HaMikdash, Moshe Rabbeinu's got to be there. V'ata zokef es roshan. What does that mean? You will lift their heads. You will lift their heads. What? It's just crazy. What does that mean? So I saw the Bnei Yissaschar says as follows, and he's talking about Parsha Shekalim, but he's relating to an entirely, he's taking an entirely different approach. But the idea is as follows. He says that there's, in the Parsha of Shekalim, in the 6 verses that we will read, there are 346 words. 346. Now, he says the gematria, the numerical value of Moshe is 345. 345. So there's one more than Moshe. Okay. He says that the reason for this, and he says just Kabbalistically, and I'm not going to get into this right now, is that Moshe Rabbeinu is related to the Aleph, the first letter in the Jewish alphabet. The numerical value of Aleph, Rabbi Wolbe, is?
That's 1.
So he basically says this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu is considered the Rosh of the Jewish people. He is the Aleph, he's the 1. And therefore, I don't really get it exactly. I would have to review it more carefully. When you read the psukim, the verses of Shekalim, there's going to be 345, which is Gematria Moshe, plus 1. Okay, the point is that Moshe Rabbeinu is considered the Rosh of the Jewish people. And he's there when they read the Shekalim. And that's really when he is is allowed to take one step closer to building the Beis HaMikdash. And so God says, you're going to be there, V'ata zokef es roshan, you're going to lift their heads. Who's their heads? Their heads is himself. Who's the head of the Jewish people? Who's the Rosh? That's Moshe. And here's what I want to suggest. The word shekel is Gematria 430. Okay? 430. So the word shekel is 430, but you give two, right? I give half, you give half, so we're both giving a shekel. We're both giving half a shekel, but let's just, for argument's sake, we're both giving... So what's 430 plus 430?
That would be 860.
Okay, 860. But we said Moshe Rabbeinu is Aleph, he's 1. Okay, so you add 1 to 860, it's 861, which is exactly Gematria Beis HaMikdash.
Wow.
So there's shekel plus Moshe is Beis HaMikdash.
So that Moshe was missing, so to speak, this. This is the way for him to ultimately gain his legacy of building the temple. Half shekel, my half shekel plus your half shekel, coming together to form that zeh, to form that foundation stone, and to form that ultimate enduring temple, the third temple, the temple made out of fire.
Right, and the moral of the story is that the minimum amount of money that you can donate to Torch is $861. I think you're accepting 800,000, 861,000. Would you take that if you were pressured into it? I take it. Yes,
we'll take that even in shekels. I was going to say, well, how does this all connect with together? But really, how does this connect with our fundraiser? Which, do you remember the website for that?
I cannot, after a share like that, I can't remember anything.
Your brain is too frazzled. It's givetorch.org. And I think that that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring the Jewish people together. We know that one of the ways that the Jewish people merit to rebuild the temple, the third temple, is with repentance and with reconnecting to our heritage and reconnecting to our Torah. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to spread Torah to the whole world, to every corner, to every Jew, to join their zeh, to join together. And I was thinking, you're a Kohen. Kohanim are endowed with special powers of blessing. Maybe you could give a blessing to everyone who makes a donation at givetorch.org.
Let's start off with a blessing to everyone listening to this podcast.
Wait. You even want to bless the people who are not going to give a donation?
No, I think after this blessing, it will there's just no way they won't give a donation. No, look, Hashem should fulfill all of your prayers. I think that's because you all know what you need. I don't know what you need, but I'm sure you're praying for it, and I'll just bless you that Hashem should accept them and give you what you need, including $861 extra dollars.
But can we give a special blessing to all those who are contributing at givetorch.org?
Yeah, so anyone who gives to givetorch.org should be especially financially successful and should come up with really great insights to share with Rabbi Wilby and myself, because we both really look forward to the various feedback. And better than feedback is I like the insights and the questions.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Botnick, for coming and blowing our mind. We went to so many different corners of our philosophy and our history. We talked about Moshe in the past, Moshe in the future, Moshe being the Aleph. We spoke about the sale of Joseph, the sin of the golden calf, the Zeh that appears in so many different places, the foundation stone that came from this source on high, the sand or the snow that was taken from underneath the throne of glory and chucked down. We also learned that this half coin, it's so mystifying to Moshe, and God has to show him it made out of fire. But really we learned about what binds us together and the importance of national unity and the danger and the catastrophe and the calamity, to use your word, of when that gets disjointed, when it comes apart. And that was featured in these two sins. We're trying to rectify that. Each one of us contributing our half, each one of us coming together to build something wonderful that we can only do together. That the sum is greater than the total is greater than the sum of the parts. When we come together, we can do incredible things. It's a wonderful message to think about during this week, Parshas Shekalim. And again, the website is givetorch.org. Rabbi Botnick's email address is botnicksm@gmail.com. All the questions about the Kabbalistic stuff, just send it straight to him. Just, you don't even have to CC me, because my answer is, I don't know, it's too mysterious to me. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. And once again, for a final time, what's the website for the fundraiser, Rabbi Botnick?
GiveTorch.org.
GiveTorch.org. I'll see you there. Thanks for your support. And please, God, we'll talk again for the month of Adar.